Hi everyone, I'm back. Now that you've got your sourdough starter going and you've been feeding it and you're comfortable with it and you're ready to bake, I'm going to show you how to make the easiest bread recipe. It's Pantry Mama's recipe, and I have the link in the document to the Pantry Mama, but I'm just going to show you how I do it here. I don't know, possible I might tweak something. I don't know if I still do it exactly how she shows, but it's close. So what you need is your sourdough discard. This is a discard recipe. So I'm going to use some of my refrigerator discard because it's been sitting in there and it needs to get used up. And I have this KitchenAid. You don't need a KitchenAid. You can go ahead and you can knead it by hand. But yeah, I like my KitchenAid. It makes it so much easier. Put it on my scale because, like I said, I don't like to measure because then I have to use measuring cups and do some more washing, and I don't like that. So I've got my bowl on here and I've got it tare over to 0, so we're ready to start. So this recipe calls for, let's do this up, 100 grams of discard. So as you've been feeding your sourdough during the week and you dump half of it into your discard jar and then you keep the other half, that discard jar is probably filling up, right? That is what you use to make this recipe. So I'm just gonna dump in till I get to 100 or 116. This is kind of when your sourdough is very active, it takes the place of yeast. That's basically what the sourdough is. It's your yeast. When it's discard and it's not active, for this recipe for bread, we will have to add a little yeast. But my point of that was, if you go over a little bit, it's okay. It won't hurt. It won't hurt anything. So you have 100 grams of the discard. You have 500 grams of flour. I like to use half and half. You can use all-purpose flour, you can use bread flour, you can use wheat flour, any kind of flour. I like to use half wheat. Oops, get it back to 0. So 250 of the wheat. Oh yeah, that's good. Take some back out. This is where the flour, it does make a little bit of a difference because if you have too much flour, then your dough's not going to be right. 250 of the wheat flour, and then 250 of all-purpose. This one is even all-purpose bleached. Some people use unbleached. I don't really know what all of that difference is, but I just know this recipe is not too picky. And then 250 of water, which makes it really easy to remember. 250, 250, 250. Oops, I forgot to 0. I might not have enough in my little pot. Nope. This does not matter if it's chlorinated or unchlorinated water. If you use a little warm water, sometimes it helps it to rise a little bit better, but it doesn't matter. All right, so you take your sourdough, your flour, and your water. And you mix it together. Now you mix it to what is called in the sourdough, or maybe it's in the baking world, I don't know, what is called shaggy dough. And just put it on. Usually I don't tend to go any higher than the second setting for my sourdough bread. I just let it go and it's kind of mixing it all up. If it's not grabbing it, sometimes This is where, of course, you could be doing it by hand too. It's not that big a deal. Keep it a little less work. All right, almost there. All right, if you look at this dough, this is what would be described as shaggy. It's kind of dry, it's mixed up, but it's kind of dry still. So you can let this shaggy dough sit for half an hour so that the flour soaks up all of the water and all of the liquid. But I have been told that you don't really need to do that, and it works okay if you don't. And because I always cut corners and do things the easiest way possible, I don't do that anymore. So we go to the next step. The next step is adding the rest of the ingredients, which is...
Yeah, I found it. You tried to hide it from us.
Hot. My coffee.
It's cold
Back to
down
my
or
scale. It's humid.
humid? I'm okay with a short sleeve shirt.
All right. So 60 grams of butter. It should be room temperature. There's these eggs. Okay, we're a little bit short, so we just get as much as we can here. Okay. And then we need 40 grams of sugar. We need 10 grams of salt. Perfect. And then we need 7 grams of non-existent yeast. I think I need to refill my yeast. Let's see what this is. Now, like I said before, the sourdough is yeast. It's just that when it's not active, it's not as yeasty, I guess. So, because we went over a little bit, if I don't use quite 7 grams, it will be okay. And I'm sure what you'll do is what I've done. Start out exactly, and then kind of create your own recipe according to what works for you. But I do need more yeast. Now we need to pause.
Pretend it's paused.
Pretend we're paused right now while I break into my yeast. I got it. Ooh, this is a lot. This is big. And yeast, like, you can put it on there and it'll say 0. And I dumped some in there, but it won't register. I don't understand why, but you'll definitely probably use more than you expect. So, salt, sugar, butter, yeast. Add that to your original mixture. And then bring it back over here. And mix it up. Now this is going to take a while. Usually like between 5 and 8 minutes. You'll notice when it starts slapping against the bowl and pulling away from the bowl, that's when it will be done. And so if you just watch it, you can already see it starting to mix up. Stay with me for 5 minutes. You can already see it starting to pull away. See how it does that? It starts to clean up the side of the bowl. Now, this part, if you were not using the KitchenAid, you'd be doing it by hand. On your counter, just kneading it and kneading it until it gets slap happy. That's what I call it. I don't know. That's what it's really called. Oh, look at it, see? Now hopefully you'll have to let me know if you get this excited when yours starts coming together, because I always do. Looking good. I must have did the perfect measurements for this one. Real, you're perfect, right? Okay, now I would let this go, and I probably will, so you don't have to stand there, sit here and watch this going for 8 minutes, just going around and around in circles. I'll show you what you do next. Once you have it, once it's on for 5 to 8 minutes, and it's like kind of like flapping across the sides of it, and you'll know what I mean once you get there. Just turn it off, and all you have to do is take this out, or if you're doing it by hand on the counter, just put it in a bowl. Throw something over it and let it rise. You want it to rise about double. It probably, depending on how warm or cold your house is, it might take 1 to 2 hours. I usually make sure that I have at least 2 hours because I always forget about it. So that way, you know, as long as I have 2 hours to get to the next step, by the time I remember it again, it's usually doubled, at least doubled in size. So let it set for 1 to 2 hours, and then we'll come back for part 2.